Shalom again, everybody. I want to continue our discussions with regards to the issues of psychic self-defense and the like. In other words, how to stand up against what's going on in this world and what we can do to, I guess, try to spiritually, I don't know if I should use that word spiritually, maybe psychologically. For me, spiritual, psychological, really one and the same. But how to keep ourselves from being, if you allow me to use the Star Wars term, seduced by the dark side. I want to talk to you about some of the ideas and concepts that I wrote in my book, Protection from Evil. And it's cover right there. I published this a long, long time ago. Oh gosh, about 15 years ago, I think. And I think that we really need to place some focus again on where we are today. Let me lay down foundations that I think I've laid down to you before, but what we really, really need, not just to talk about, not to agree or disagree on, but to learn how to experience and, if you will, see with your own eyes. The ultimate reality is that everything in the world is energy. Remember, Einstein said E equals mc squared, light, matter, energy are all interrelated with one another because they're all technically one and the same thing. Well, energy is alive. It's sentient. It has, if you will, a mind of its own. The ultimate original form of energy is God. When we want to speak about God, the creator, we have created all types of mythologies and fantasies of how we try to humanize God and think that God is just like us. He's a guy. Even the Torah, the Bible, refers to God in the masculine tense, he, and we think that's actually some type of gender application. Well, I guess we're lucky or blessed that we have greater literature from the original prophetic school and onward, which shares with us that God is far more than that. Like we know from Genesis, when it states there that we, human beings, were created in the image of God, male and female. So God has male and female attributes. The later theoretical Kabbalists gave these attributes names and forms so that we could help recognize their reality. They called them the 10 Sephirot. And the Sephirot have been an idea that's been embraced in the Kabbalah and hijacked by all kinds of perverted, disgusting misinterpretations of what our sacred literature teaches us. Those of you who are not Jewish, you recognize from your own religious traditions how many perversions and cults that have arisen from your sacred traditions, and how you try to desperately safeguard what you know and believe to be sacred from those crazy out of control cults. Well, we're no different. We've had all these crazy out of control cults for a long time, and you just gotta shine the light so as to expose their darkness. When we talk about the 10 Sephirot, we're talking about personality attributes within ourselves. The Sephirot are applications of this energy that we've been talking about. And if we really want to stand up against the system, if we really want to be victorious, to be free, then we must recognize that freedom begins within. Now, this is a very important message that actually has its source right in the Bible. You're all familiar with the story of the Exodus. God intervened in human history in the most overt ways and redeemed the children of Israel from Egyptian bondage. Freedom. That's a dramatic pause because I was about to say, or was it? Because we read later in the book of Numbers when the children of Israel, Moses, sent out the 12 spies to check out the land, a recon team, if you will, to see what and how things were going to be. And the team came back brokenhearted with a spirit of weakness. And that spirit of weakness, like energy, permeated through the entire camp. and brought the energy field of the camp down low. In essence, convinced them that they could not conquer the land, and that as strong as God was, they were not strong enough to fulfill the divine command. Essentially, the lesson to be learned was this: God could take the people out of Egypt, but even God could not take the Egypt out of the people. And the only conclusion that came out of this is God saw the people who were just so weak-hearted, who refused to change, refused to elevate their energy, and said, okay, I guess we'll sit here for the next 38 years and wait for all of this generation, the weak generation, to die. And your children, who will grow up in the freedom of never knowing what it was like to be slaves, they will rise, be the soldiers who will conquer the land. And that's the real reason why they stayed 40 years in the wilderness. That wasn't the original plan, you should know. But consequences of people's choices. We are no different today. That's what we need to understand. Now, I'm not worried about any of us having to go out and live in the wilderness for 40 years, but we are under global psychic attack. There are forces in this world who are underlying, or if you will, bankrolling, directing what is behind Chinese or Chinese communism or other types of forms of godlessness, which are attempting to permeate our societies today. We see the corruption. We see the wars. You should know very well the prophecy in the book of Daniel, which spoke of the final kingdom with feet of iron and clay, and how that collapses the entire system of the world. It has been well known that that iron and clay model is, if you will, Christianity and Islam, because that fight is only yet to explode. It's also godliness, godlessness, freedom versus slavery. This is why the forces and powers that we call, in quote, the left, are all very power centric. They want control. This was the same psychology of Nimrod or Nebuchadnezzar or all these others who just want to put their iron fist and control. Now, there's control, and then there's control. There's good control. God is king. The Davidic monarchy are kings, David, Solomon, and eventually the fulfillment of the reestablishment of that bloodline in time to come. They rule as monarchies. And what it's going to be like then? Well, if we believe the prophets, I hope we do, it'll be heaven on earth, because we will have an enlightened ruler. We do not have any enlightened rulers today, whether they are monarchical, democratic, socialist, or anything of the kind. They seek to control. And the one thing they want to control more than anything else is your mind. And of course, your heart. And they have developed modern technology. They have developed all the cell phones and the social media and the internet and everything specifically to influence and control your mind. And artificial intelligence is also like that. It's all being controlled to control you. So there's a force behind this all. You want to call the force the devil or this or that, call whatever. It doesn't matter what words and terms we use to describe things. What matters is what we can do to stand against it. Recognize then you're not fighting a political battle or a social battle or a philosophical battle. You are fighting a psychic battle. And the psychic battle begins in your heart and goes to your mind. Energy. Energy, as you should know from basic science, frequencies, modulations, up and down. For those of you who may remember good old school radio, you have to tune in the station that you want to listen to. So if you're on a satellite radio or good old school FM, you can't get one channel when you're tuned into the other. It doesn't work that way. It's the same thing, energy. When your personal psychological energy is on one frequency, that's what you're going to tune into. However, if you change your personal frequency, you'll pick up a different broadcast. This is how psychic self-defense works. Because the forces in this world are trying to get you all tuned into their frequency to hear their message. And their message is one of enslavement. The whole reason why everything culturally around the world is against the United States, because the United States is still the last bastion of freedom in the world. I can hear some of you like laughing as I say that, says America is free compared to everywhere else that you want to go. And yeah, it is. Right? This is the reality of things. Now, again, as you see, I put up a picture of my book here, Protection from Evil. Because if we're going to talk about energy frequency modulation, you must take this out of the realm of theory. You must take this out of the realm of fantasy or delusion and bring it right back down to practical, everyday matters. You need to understand how your own mind works, how reality around us works. This book I wrote, it's more a psychological primer than anything else. And I'll tell you why I wrote it. Years and years and years and years ago, I read a book from one of the writers from the occult. It was a woman her name was Violet Firth, if I'm not mistaken. She wrote under the pen name Dion Fortune. She wrote a whole bunch of books from obviously, occultic Christian points of view, not totally kosher, and we would say by biblical standards, but she tapped into something. And that is a recognition and an awareness of the forces of evil, how they operate, and from her own perspective, how to address that. She wrote a book maybe a century ago, close to it, called Psychic Self-Defense. And when I read that, I said, I need to come out with a biblical version of this, where in which people could recognize how to get into the modulation of holiness, the frequency of righteousness, to do what is right, necessary, and proper, so as to get off of those other frequencies and back into the proper frequency of divinity. And that's why I wrote this book. Now, recognize there's no magic ceremonies, no rituals, no holy names or anything of the kind. All of those things are superfluous. That's right, superfluous. You don't need to learn holy names and invocations and this and that. I've seen so many people try all these things. Let me tell you something. You may call yourself a demon hunter. I've seen people who do. I've actually saw one gentleman recently, Christian, who had tattooed on his arm, Sayad Shadim. And I thought, odd that a man with a cross would be tattooed with Hebrew, apparently, not the only one. He calls himself a demon hunter. I said, okay, listen to what he had to say. I wasn't going to comment or challenge or anything like that. I would hope and pray that anyone who dares to engage in those activities knows what the heck they're doing, because what you're doing is like poking a tiger. You don't go poking a tiger if you don't know what to do. And I hear many people say, I am the name of God. Choose your religion, so whatever name that you choose to use. But let me tell you something about you and the names that you choose to use. More so than not, they are what we can call paper tigers. In other words, they're shallow, superficial, and for the most part, they don't work. Why? Because if you're encountering a higher dimensional entity of whatever energetic frequency, they look at you as like you're this little itsy bitsy thing there. And what they're reading in you is your energy frequency. So all of this superficial facades of holy names and rituals mean nothing to them if you yourself as an individual don't shine that light within yourself. If you have fear, you do not shine that light within yourself. If you have doubt, you do not shine that light within yourself. If you have confusion, or immorality or unrighteousness, you do not shine that light within yourself. You're a paper tiger. These entities see it and they mock you. They laugh at you. So you might think that you're able to take them, proverbially, and throw them out the front door of whatever house or somebody. But all they do then is walk around, they come in through the back door, meaning through the subconscious of the individual, and they take residence back there without you being any more aware. Because if the person has an opening in their psyche, then they are always going to be subject to the forces of the dark side and evil. That's why I wrote Protection from Evil, because you need to learn psychic strength in order to practice psychic self-defense, in order to safeguard your hearts and your minds. I'm not so much concerned about your theology, your doctrines, what religion you are. I read your comments online, and I know many of you share your pedantic views. It has to be this way. This is the only way. Oh, okay, believe whatever you want. That's fine. But you might find that your narrowness, well, you think it's a strength, is actually a serious weakness. And why? Because in your narrow-mindedness of view and belief, you have blocked out of your mental vision the reality of knowing who your true allies are, who your natural friends are, and you grow more and more in isolation. And as the old saying goes, united we stand, but divided we fall. And you are being psychically manipulated to divide so that they, the forces of evil out there, are conquering you. Because you are standing on your soapbox, I am the right one and no one else is. Okay. You do not know your friends. You do not know with whom to stand. And therefore, nature takes its course. Everything is energy. Everything, high and low, good and evil, holy and profane. And as long as you open yourselves up to narrow-minded thought, open-minded hatred, I hate this group, I hate that group. Today, anti-Semitism is exploding again in the world. Sorry, Solomon said nothing new under the sun there. It's not like Jews haven't known this forever, you know. And look around the world. It's not only the Jews who are target of racism. Look at what's happening to Christian minorities in nations in Africa. Look at what's happening to other minorities in other places around the world. You have plenty of hatred, plenty of irrational hatred, which leads to irrational violence. And think about it. We are being groomed here in Western civilization, especially here in the United States, to be just like that. Every day we're hearing stories in the news of not desperate people, but wealthy, yuppie type people who are, I don't know, bored with life. Say, I want to join the terrorist movements and kill innocent people. Why? Because I'm right and they're wrong. What? Okay, so you have your beliefs, but why does that lead to violence? Because it must. Why? You'll find that the rational application of thought is cut off in these people. And it can be applicable in all across the board, different views of different people. It's happening now on the right. It's happening now on the left. It's happening everywhere. And that is that divide and conquer spirit of the Nimrodian evil, the Nephilim. Oh, they're here. Yes, they are. They're the ones who are behind the godlessness in this world. They're the ones behind the divide and conquer. They're the ones behind the real intifada global, or the jihad, or the Chinese, or whatever hand through which they act. Now, you can get spooked out about that all you want. Who cares? You can be afraid about that all you want. Who cares? All that matters is what you choose to do. And you have to do it. I wrote the book, and it's not to tell you what to do or to tell you how to think. It's to give you ideas and insights for you to think about, to contemplate. It is universal, even though I take my sources and insights from our Torah and biblical prophetic traditions. The messages therein are universal for everyone. I cannot encourage you more to make the investment in yourselves. Pick up the book. It's on Amazon. It should be available around the world. I think the Kindle version is available too. I'll put a link here in the what you call in the section here or whatever, and take it to heart. And I'll tell you just a saying that we say in Hebrew, which is Baruch HaOmer ve'oseh. Blessed is the one who says and does. It's not good enough that you have good intentions. The old saying is the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions. All that matters is your actions, your doing, your behavior. Do what's right. Save your minds and your hearts from the influences of harm and evil and the hatred and sexual perversions and everything else that's out there. Cleanse yourselves from within, and you will stand psychically as an immovable monolith of strength. And only then, when the forces around look at you, will they recognize that you cannot be defeated. Please take this to heart, and God bless. God bless. We'll pick up and we'll talk more about these things in lessons to come. Thank you all again. God's blessings. Shalom.